There's no such thing as fully autonomous anything. Because it's such a human-led process, it really
Isn't that
matters
interesting?
about the human.
Welcome back to Unboxing Logistics. I'm your host, Lori Boyer, and this is the coolest, most fun, most chill, most interesting podcast in the supply chain universe. And I'm not even a little bit biased. And today we're going to talk about one of the places in this industry that I just love, and that is warehouses. The first time I went into a warehouse, I think my mind was blown at the sheer magnitude of what goes on there. And today I've brought on as a guest Kevin Gibbon, and he has an incredible company, an incredible story, and he's going to teach us a lot about the modern warehouse, what it means when warehouses are running almost autonomously. And maybe we'll let Kevin tell us more about that. But Kevin, welcome to the show. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and your company?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much for having me, Laurie. A big Easy Post fan. I actually almost, and maybe he'll refute this. I almost co-founded Easy Post with Jared.
All
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
We'll get Jared on the show to see what he
Yeah,
says about that,
yeah.
Kevin.
I don't know how. Maybe he wasn't. It was his company, and he was looking to bring me on. But yeah. So my background. I studied school, computer science. I moved out to the Bay Area. I'm from Canada, from Vancouver. I moved out there about 15 years
I
ago.
picked that up immediately when you said a boat.
About,
A
yes.
boat.
Um,
Uh-huh.
and yeah, I started my first real venture-backed company. It was a company called Ship. It was also in logistics. I've been now, it's going on 15 years that I've been in logistics startups. And what it was solving my own pain point. I used to be an eBay power seller. It was terrible to try to take all the boxes to the post office and package all that stuff. So we built a call it Uber for shipping app that basically take a picture, whatever you want, we'll come to you and box it up, ship it out, and then we actually used Easy Post on the back end as well to print labels. And so through that, I learned a lot about so we actually had to have warehouses. We were in five major markets. We raised a lot of venture capital. And it was an amazing product. And the company ultimately did not survive like most startups don't. But we had a great fan base, and people loved the product, but it just wasn't a business. The frequency of use for consumer shipping just not there when you have so much overhead that we had to make the operations work. And then after that, I took all my learnings and some people and started my next company. It was called Airhouse. And what that was to go and solve a different part of the shipping puzzle for a different audience, and that was direct-to-consumer brands. It was to how do you make the warehousing, the 3PL space a little bit better. And I did have some wounds from Ship, so I didn't want to go and start my own fully vertically integrated warehouse again. So I decided that there was enough partners out there that we could just basically put a wrapper on a technology wrapper on top of kind of a very messy ecosystem. And that's what we did. And we had a pretty good business. We were doing tens of millions of dollars in revenue. But we took venture, and that unfortunately is not what I aim to do. And that's not what investors are really looking for you to do. So we had a soft landing, and then I love the space so much, and I think that I don't know if I have uh just like the punishment or whatever about logistics. It's not as easy as technology, just pure tech is.
Kevin, I
But
feel like once you get in logistics, you can't leave it.
there's
It's
so
like
many
becomes
problems.
part of you.
Yes, there's so many problems to solve, and so
Exactly.
I took all my lessons from the previous two companies, and it was like, okay, well, the 3PL problem was massive. We just couldn't solve it any better. Partnering with other warehouses basically made their problems our problems. So you have a GM, it's all human based, and you're dealing with warehouses that have hundreds of employees. It's a lot of temp labor, and you have a warehouse manager that's not doing their job good enough within a larger 3PL organization. And just that one warehouse can take out like 20% of your customers potentially. We had a network, and so it all had to work together. And so took that learning that this is still a massive problem, and then took the learning of Ship to be like, okay, maybe it wasn't that bad to actually stand up buildings and do a lot of the hard stuff. But what has changed is that there's just so much more robotics out there in the world. And there's really nobody that's positioned well to actually take a look at all of the different components and kind of make what is going to be the next version of the Amazon warehouse, for example. And that's essentially what we did. We saw that the prices fall and the number of different competing products for different parts in the warehouse just soar. But a lot of the legacy operators, it's just too hard for them to figure out how they continued their operations with a fully staffed human-powered warehouse, and then automation comes in, it's completely different skill set and all those different things. You have competing interests. And so what we did at Cytronic, so now it's 2 years, and we're just getting our first customers now that we've been building. It's a fully autonomous warehouse for direct-to-consumer shippers. So it's a very small use case. So typically 3PLs, they'll do everything. They'll do B2B, they'll do a ton of returns, they'll do all these things. We're just really good at getting a bunch of different SKUs into like a poly bag or a box out very quickly. And so I'll kind of let you know some of the numbers that we have, but we do a micro fulfillment center. So with about 30,000 square feet, our ceiling per day is about 20,000 orders that we get out. And that's with a handful of people working a 24-hour shift and also 7 days a week. And the majority of the operation is actually automated. The only pieces that really aren't are some of the more complicated packaging pieces, but also just the kind of making sure everything's running and all the different odds and ends. We try to make it very narrow what we would be really good at, and we say no to a lot of other stuff. But there still is, as you know, in logistics, there's so many edge cases, there's so many different things. So that is a continuous problem. But ultimately, what we do is we use robotics to bring down the cost. So typically, fulfillment can cost up to $5-6 a package. We bring it down to $2, and so it's a huge savings, and is only going to get better for us. But the most important piece is that we started with this. We didn't have any customers, anything else. We started with this. We started with an idea, a very small R&D facility, making sure that we would hit our throughput metrics with the CapEx that we actually needed to. And we did it, and we're continuing better today. And right now, we're live in Chicago. We're live in the East Bay of California. And then we'll be in the East Coast this year, LA this year, Dallas in a couple months. We've really found something that's working, and we're going to be expanding it.
I'm going to throw a few questions at you that I know my audience will have right off. First, so is it like a 3PL model where your customers are D2C people who come to you and your warehouses are autonomous? Or are you talking that you come to somebody who has a warehouse and you're building them an autonomous warehouse? Like, talk about it. Like, if we have a shipper out there listening, for instance, how would they understand it for them?
We're another 3PL that's going to get your stuff there a lot cheaper. And how we do it is with robotics.
Okay, so the price is lower, so it's still 3PL. So, you're not dealing with whatever's going on in the warehouse, but Kevin has created a system where people get the advantage. Because one of the big challenges, obviously, of automating a warehouse is that upfront cost people often have for themselves. But you've taken that cost and now been able to pass along all the savings to your 3PL customers, correct?
Yeah, exactly. It's very similar model than like AWS works on, right? Like they They get the buildings, they have the racking, they do a lot of on the technology side. It's the same thing with us. And we do all make sure everything's running. You don't need to come and see the warehouse. A lot of people actually did when they had a 3PL because things just went wrong. And so
I would, Kevin. And whenever I have guests on for podcasts, I always recommend getting some boots on the ground.
yeah,
It's a good insight for you as a business owner.
totally. Well, because just the nature of the labor and also the peaks in demand, it just make it extremely hard business to run, especially when you are trying to get the lowest price point, and pay people less and also operate in like lower paying areas. And so it's really hard. And that's also what I saw at Airhouse. Like we work with, I thought, the best 3PLs. Every 3PL has the same issues. Every 3PL is going to go and they're going to screw up your stuff. And it might be 2 weeks before you get those some of these orders out. And it's just the nature of the actual model. And so with us, we're trying to automate everything, but that doesn't just mean that robotics. We're looking to just do 100%. It's like every single process. So we've rethought about the very first touch point, the first call you get on with a 3PL is typically like maybe the owner or one of the managers that is actually running the day-to-day operations. We will get you a quote literally on the first sales call, and we actually close our big clients in 2 to 3 calls, which is unheard of for this industry. So we speed up everything possible within the technology, within the warehouse, within everything. And so it's not just it's robotics, but it's like it's streamlined process through the entire thing. So we do want it to feel like the difference between having to run your own data center and going to AWS, for example, as it relates to us in logistics.
I love it. I want to back up a little bit and I've got some of the questions kind of that I often get from people. So when we're talking, when we hear warehouse without people,
Yeah.
right? Some people are like, does that even really work? Is that risky? How are you going to catch if something goes wrong? As you mentioned, things
Yes.
always go wrong in
Always
warehouses,
do.
right? Even
Always.
with robots and automation, things may go wrong. Um, how would you respond? Is this risky? How do you offset challenges when it comes to sort of the lack of people around?
So I think that a mistake would have been to try to fully automate everything before having customers, and that's why we specifically didn't do it. There have been a couple companies that have done this, and they spent hundreds of millions of dollars, and we probably have more revenue than they do right now. Because it's just very difficult to impossible to kind of make everything just run right. So we look to just kind of chop off the biggest either time sucks for people or the costs, the price point. And so like some of the big things that we do, and also people that are listening to this, if you do run your own warehouses, you could do the same thing. A lot of the stuff that we actually use, we do have a robotics team. We do build some of our own stuff, but most of it actually is purchased from a number of different suppliers. But like the ASRS system, that's a great example. So automatic storage and retrieval system. If you've ever seen these big cubes looking things in a warehouse that will have ours has different totes that operate on an aluminum, basically 3D matrix. And there's robots up top that will basically move the different items to the actual packing bins base. And so you could get an actual like SKU every 7 seconds, for example. Just unheard of if you're going to be doing the picking. Even with Kiva, Kiva is just you're bringing all of the actual warehouse to the packer versus just the items that they actually need. And so that was the biggest kind of difference in everything. In the cost, yeah, it's expensive. It'll run you more than $1 million. But like if you're running a high volume operation, you could get that paid off pretty quickly. And so we look at just like areas that we could just reduce the price point and also the human complexity or whatever, and not try to to be fully autonomous. There is no such thing as fully autonomous anything.
Okay, so first thing that I'm hearing, and advice for you if you're looking to create your own kind of automated warehouse, take your warehouse into the next, generation, into our new days. Don't try to go fully automated. I said warehouse without people. That's absolutely not true.
No.
There are a warehouse with people because we're still in the tech phase where people need to oversee some things. So you've got some people in it, but just far fewer people, and you're automating specific bottleneck processes
Yeah,
rather than trying to go fully automated. Does that sound right? Like that's your first piece of
yeah,
advice is don't go
totally.
crazy that way.
Totally. Yeah.
Okay.
No, I know some legacy 3PLs that use the same robotics that we do. Now, if you're not an expert in it, you probably are going to pay a lot more, and you
Mhm.
most likely are going to use like systems integrator, and so the price point is higher. But yeah, you could absolutely do it yourself and save yourself a ton of time, and also the quality is just a lot higher. A lot of those repetitive tasks that humans really are not designed to do can
Not
be
fun for
solved.
anyone.
No, they can be solved a lot easier with automation robotics.
So, Kevin, where are the kind of bottlenecks? Where are the limitations you found in kind of the human driven warehouses? What are the areas that you feel like lend themselves best to automation right now?
It really is the pieces of time that take up the most, the pieces of the operation take up the most amount of time. So actually picking from the bins, getting it to a pick cart to the actual packing station, that takes by far the most amount of time. And then it would be the actual packaging to get it into some sort of assembly line or into different carrier bins or something like that, sortation. Those will be your two biggest time savers. And then everything else, I think a lot of it actually has to do with what types of customers you take on. Traditionally, 3PLs, I've kind of just been like, we'll do anything to win your business because it's so competitive. And so now you're putting this sticky notes, and you're handwriting this thing for this one customer, and then this other customer has fragile stuff and it's not properly packaged for the manufacturer and all those different types of things. So if you're running your own brand, you could control it more. But if you're running a 3PL, like with us, we just say no. We don't do big B2B stuff. We'll do small B2B. But like that is not an area that we know that we can like really compete on price or anything else with the way that we're positioned. So it's really small e-commerce goods. So the vast majority, it's like 75% of what people will sell on Shopify, for example. That's kind of our target audience. But that really, I think from anything, if 3PLs can just like focus on that, not doing everything, they would be in a much better position. And so yeah, other than that, those are the two big pieces. I could say that returns is still a pain. Um,
Returns is an opportunity,
Opportunity, yes.
which basically all pains are opportunities, right? At
Right.
some point.
Right.
You and I, Kevin, we'll figure it out together and become
I
like
love it.
billionaires.
I love it. I love it.
Okay, so I wanted to back up then. I said step one, figure out what you're automating. You have people in the warehouse, blah, blah, blah. No. Step one, define your audience. So if you are a 3PL out there and you are looking at who you want, be willing to say no. I love Kevin's mantra there. Be willing to say no. Understand. Don't get sucked into like, oh, but that looks like such a good deal. No, that may like mess up your whole warehouse system and things that seem like you're going to be bringing in tons of revenue with all the extra costs here and there end up not being worth it. So define who your audience is and then set up your warehouse in a
Yeah.
way that you're automating the most time-consuming tasks. Now, Kevin, I would think from warehouse to warehouse, that could
Yeah.
potentially be different. I know that I've talked sometimes with warehouse owners, and this is outside of the automation field, but they'll say, "We'll have the same processes."
Yeah.
But then we realize, one, the picking is taking 20% longer than the other simply because the layout's slightly different or do you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
do you have to kind of automate by building versus just one process that flat goes out to everyone?
So yeah, we've spent a lot of time thinking about that. So we purposely do smaller warehouses so we don't run
Mm-hmm.
into that problem. So we're best suited towards people with lighter weight stuff that are doing a lot of throughput. And
So
we'll
lighter weight. What do you think weight wise?
like less than 5 pounds an
Less than
item.
5 pounds.
Yeah,
Okay.
which is you know more than I do. You have more of the data, but that's the vast majority of
Totally.
shipments. You really can't do everything, and you just kind of need to pick your different area for whatever you're going to do, and that goes to every single type of business. Like, why are you uniquely positioned to actually do this better than somebody else? And we've just taken the approach that we're going to be the lowest cost, highest throughput. We're going to have the most amount of nodes in the US and then globally. We're not going to be for everybody, but the companies that we're going to be best for, we're going to completely change their business. And so that's what we picked, and there's enough to go around for everybody else. And
The
hopefully,
way e-commerce is growing, you betcha.
exactly. Yeah, yeah, totally.
I love that. So let's say as you've moved to this kind of more automated format, are there things that have surprised you? Are there maybe things that were harder even? Was it hard for people to adjust to doing it? I guess give me kind of the real life scenario of what's it like to go from kind of the more traditional warehouse to kind of more of those things being automated.
So that was kind of one of the benefits of starting a new company. Didn't have any of that baggage.
You didn't have to do a whole
No.
change management thing, right?
Exactly. So everybody that was hired knew exactly what they were getting into. So for people that we obviously still have people on the floor, and sometimes they're doing the similar tasks that a regular 3PL would typically do. But our goal is to just make it a lot easier for them. So it's going to be a more lightweight kind of warehousing job, and also the opportunities to grow within the company and run these things. Because we're a startup, but also because we're trying to push the envelope on a lot of these different things. That's what we really sell people on. And people like that. People like it's kind of amazing how you take an old industry and you put a lot of cool tech, and this happened to me also at my first company, Ship. People just go crazy for like when you're just change something that like thinking about going to the post office and like that's like comparable to like the DMV. Same thing with us. Like it's just it's one of those pieces for like fulfillment is like kind of just like a very expensive like tax on the e-commerce industry. And nobody really wants to pay for it. Shipping's the next piece, and obviously that's a little bit bigger. But you need to actually get your stuff there, so that makes sense. And yeah, we're just focused on bringing that down, and so people can make more money. And also, I think a big thing about us is that we want to allow people to sell where they want. I think that Amazon did an amazing job kind of sculpting the e-commerce industry and getting everybody used to consumers the 2 day shipping. But there really is no alternative to Amazon, the FBA, if you want to get those really quick delivery times. And as you know, you have the data as well, that the actual like conversion that you see, the repeat rate from like a 2 day, 1 day, 2 day shipment versus like a 6 to not like 8, 9 days for some of these direct consumer brands. People are just going to go to maybe a competitor on Amazon or something like that. So it completely changes people's businesses when you bring down the price point, and then what we do is we will put it into our network of different nodes to get it there faster for the end customer, just like FBA does. But there really hasn't been anybody that's really like really challenged Amazon with their 2 day delivery, and then allowed people to sell wherever they want. Like Amazon, you need to still like sell on Amazon Marketplace. I know they have a different product now that you could do D2C shipments on, but that's what their still is.
Absolutely. So, one of my questions that I'll often get, so one of the issues, especially somewhat smaller e-commerce companies get, is what we're calling in the industry micro surges, and that's where they will have a sudden burst of demand that was a little bit unexpected. Maybe it's an influencer posted something about their stuff, or maybe it's just peak season stuff, or maybe there was a marketing campaign that went great and they didn't know. How does a facility like yours handle, I guess, like kind of demand, supply, like big fluctuations? Does that still work fine with the automation? Is there anything people should be aware of?
The good thing is because even though that we're early, the throughput is pretty high for a warehouse. So typically, like if you're going to be doing 20,000 orders, you're going to be in probably a 500,000 square foot warehouse with at least 200 people. And so we're able to because you'll see mostly outside of the holiday season, you'll see mostly the demand curves be customer related. So as you get more variability in your customers, that demand kind of smooths out. And so the only thing you really need to forecast is peak, which is like 2x everything else. So we just can't in non-peak time, we just can't fill up our throughput to be more than 50%. That's just a rule that we have to go.
That's perfect. So that brings me to the question, if you were an e-commerce business, if you were or a retailer, whatever, if you're looking at D2C and you were investigating 3PLs, including Cytronic, what questions would you recommend that they ask? What kind of things should they be finding out to make sure that it's going to be a good, solid experience for them and for their customers?
I could talk on this because we did that. Like our partners were the 3PL. So like I've
Yeah.
partnered with, I don't know, 50 different ones and seen the operations. Honestly, it's nothing that they say. It's really just like, do you know somebody there? Can you get a good reference? How long have they been working with them? How responsible is the actual team that is going? Because it's such a human-led process, it really
Isn't that
matters
interesting?
about the
Even
human.
here where you've got this like autonomous robots, we're
Well,
not
not for us.
Julius
We're
Caesar
we're
fulfillment.
perfect. We're
And yet we're
perfect.
still people,
Yeah.
right? It's still that whole human. Okay, I love that. I want to make sure we point that out. It's not anything they say.
No.
It's more the legwork that you do.
Yes.
So can continue. I interrupted. That was so great. I loved
Yeah,
it.
yeah, no worries. Yeah, and it makes total sense too. Like you could have a good salesperson and they have no like they're not involved in the operations at all. A completely different skill set. Some 3PLs have really good sales teams. Some other ones are more laid back and have a great operations team. And then it's honestly, it's like it's even like shift dependent. That's how like granular it gets. Because as you can imagine, like you have a bad manager that's managing what 12, 15 different packers. Like if they're not on top of things, if things start getting misshipped or something like that, the whole operation just goes to crap. And so it really the human-led ones, you need to rely on the people there. And the only way you could do that with a new relationship is try to get references from people that have worked with them before, hopefully for a long time. And I definitely would say that do not skimp on your 3PL. Do not go to the cheapest one because those are the ones that are cutting corners and doing all those things. Like to run a good 3PL is very, very difficult. I really respect the owner operator ones that don't try to do too much. They're not trying to be everything to everybody because it's very, very hard to scale that type of business. And so I've actually found that the call it the 250 to $500,000 single run facilities have the highest quality of any other. Like we work with like the sequels of the world that are doing $5 or $10 billion in revenue worldwide, and most of it is just like a mismatch of like they purchased a bunch of different 3PLs and they're trying to put them all together, and so even from a technology standpoint, they have like six different OMS systems and all this stuff that they're trying to figure out in the background because this person they bought here and this person that and the cultures don't work right, and then you have a GM that has to approve of different. It's kind of just a kind of like cluster, even within the ones that seem like they have it all together. By the bigger brand names, I like the smaller owner operator ones.
I'm just gonna totally agree with you there. A lot of people get scared of some of the smaller of everything,
Yeah.
but you get so much more personalization. You get so much more say in what's happening. Like they actually care if you're like, "Hey, I want this." Where in a bigger organization, you mean nothing to them. But also, there's really, really interesting data that's been coming out that like the percentage of e-commerce sales is through the roof. Like we're going up 10%, 15% a year.
Right.
Profits are not following, and
No.
that's because of the complexity that is coming in with shipping everything and the importance of that customer relation and the loyalty and repeat customers, that experience. You can't risk losing good customers because you went cheap and they
Right.
have a poor shipping experience. It's simply financially not
No,
viable in
you'll go out
today's
of
world.
business.
So,
Yeah.
completely agree. We're totally out of time, Kevin. I feel like we could talk forever, but two things. If somebody is either, I know how great you are. If somebody's just curious on
Yeah.
automating their own warehouse and wants tips and like, Kevin, if I do this, do you have any suggestions or tip for me? Or if somebody wants to actually find out about Cytronics, if
Yeah.
they want to, maybe sign up and be part of it, what are the best ways to kind of get in contact with you?
Yeah, so our website, Cytronic, you'll probably see us in the title of something, the .ai.
Yeah,
You
we'll
could see
throw it down
our
in the
website.
description.
You could reach me. I'm Kevin at Cytronic as far as email if you have any questions or anything like that. And yeah, I'm happy. I think that like we're not going to be the only person that's going to do this. I'm happy on it from a selfish perspective. Like I want more people developing solutions. I want this return solution. So like this is the way that the warehouses are going to go. The older ones are going to take longer, but this is definitely the way that it's going to go. So for anybody that's looking out there, I definitely would. If you have a 3PL, I would ask them what their plan is. If not, you might want to start looking at something else because I could tell you like the cost savings is massive. Um, so that's whether you do it yourself, and stand up your own warehouse, or go to somebody else, or come to us. It will potentially change your business.
Yeah. Do
So
your due diligence. You've got to be looking at all the small little price differences when it comes to the fulfillment
Yep.
process because they're just eating up our profits. So, absolutely, Kevin, this was great. I cannot wait to see all the great things that Cytronic does. I'm here in the Dallas area. You mentioned you have a Dallas facility.
We
I'm
do.
going to have to go check it out.
All right.
Okay,
Anytime.
sounds good. And thanks so
Thanks,
much for being here.
Laurie.
We'll see you all next time.